Hey, it's Smikey here. Today we will be making a copper rose for my wife. There's a couple things we need. One is a stem of some type, so you can use a heavy gauge copper wire. What I will be using is this 1/4-inch tubing. This is way more than I'll need, so I have some small copper wire. I think it's about a 6 or so, a ground wire. We will need some copper pipe. Now, you don't need to buy any new stuff. Old stuff works just perfect if you're tearing it out. There are different types of copper pipe. So what I'm going to be using is a 3/4. You could use a 1-inch, and for some of the smaller little leaflets, you could use a smaller piece of pipe. But we are going to need thicker diameter pipe for some of the bigger leaves. Now, there is different copper pipe that you can buy. There is, I believe, K, L, and M. That's pretty readily available. M being the thinnest, so I would avoid buying that. What I got is an L. It's kind of right in the middle. And when I'm talking about thickness, I'm talking about the wall thickness of the pipe. If you were pulling some copper pipe out of an old house or something like that, it would probably be pretty thick already. Another option is you can get some copper sheet. One of the nice things about using the copper pipe is as we work it, it kind of gives it a texture. Some of the other materials you're going to need are some pliers, needle nose pliers, regular pliers maybe, and maybe some channel locks. And we're going to need to coat these ends with something, maybe some rubber hose or some tape. You need something to cut the pipe with. I'm going to use this to slice it down the middle and open it up. I'm going to use a hacksaw, a reciprocating saw to cut it down to the correct lengths. You could use a bandsaw, you could use a pipe cutter. There's tons of different options. We're going to need something to texture the pipe with. A cross-peen hammer is what I'll be using for the most part. A ball point is what I'll be using to flatten it out, and I'll show you that process. And maybe even some cold chisels. We're going to need some drill bits to drill the center hole, and I'm going to be using some, we're going to need a propane or some kind of torch. So propane, oxyacetylene, anything like that would work. And I'm going to be brazing at one point. You can also use solder. I like to use the braze because it kind of matches the copper color. A marker or a tape measure. We're going to do 5 petals, and then underneath there's something called a sepal, so we're going to be building that. So that's 6 pieces of pipe. I'm going to be doing 2 leaves, so now we're up to 8 different little sections of pipe that we're going to be doing. They are about 3 1/4-ish, depending. You can get away with smaller sections for the smaller pieces, but the larger pieces, that's about what we will be going with. You're going to need something to hammer on, so I'll show you my setup down here. So I've just got a sheet of 1/2-inch thick metal. If you've got an anvil, that works. If you have an old piece of I-beam metal or a railroad tie or something like that, something heavy to hit on, or even, you see back here, even the back of a vise works pretty good. So as we work copper, it work hardens and gets harder to work with. So what we have to do is heat it up and do what's called annealing it, put it into water to quench it, and that actually softens it. All right, so let's get into it. Some of this I will be talking through, and some I'll just be showing you the video. So here we go. On the vise right now, I have some what's called soft jaws. It's just a piece of aluminum angle iron that helps keep the vise from biting into the copper and leaving marks. You don't really need that, but since I have them, I will use them. Here's our pipe now. I think one of these ended up at 4.5 instead of 3.5. That doesn't matter. It's not that big of a deal. Next thing we're going to do is hit this now with the torch. Heat these up, anneal them in the water so that they become soft again, and then we're going to cut these down the middle. You can do that however you want, whatever your method is. I'm going to be using the snips here. Doesn't really matter what snips you have, the red, the green, the yellow. It really doesn't matter because we'll be pounding all these flat. They're actually pretty cool right now. I don't know how well that will show up on camera, but that's the original copper color. And they're kind of this orangey pink red. For opening these up, we don't have to tape this because any of the marks we put in will just add texture at this point. So now when we're hammering this, what we want to do is start from the inside and move the metal out. So this will actually expand. So right now, careful because this stuff is sharp. So right now we are 2.5 inches by the 3.5. So let's see how much it expands as we hammer this out. So you start from the inside and you work the metal out. So let's get going. So you can see that texture that has been put on there. Now that wouldn't happen if you had just bought copper sheets. This stuff's getting pretty work hardened. So let's go ahead and heat it and anneal it again. And then we'll do this 2 more times. So as you saw, I was grabbing onto one corner and the rest of it got heated. Hopefully that little Achilles heel won't matter. In fact, I know it won't. What I'm going to do this time is, so I hammered on this side. I'm going to hammer on this side, try and get some texture on both sides of the pedals. So that sheet is just over 3.5 now, and that is just under 2 3/4. And this is that long one that we did. So that stretched out to 4 3/4 and 2 3/4. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to heat up the sheets again, anneal them. We're going to draw our pattern on here. We're going to cut it out, and then we're going to texture it now with the with this hammer, the cross beam. So this is my smallest one. I'm going to use that for the middle. That is my longest one. I'm going to use that for the outside. And then we need 2 leaves. And the rest of these will be in between. So that'll be the longest. And then moving down. So let's draw our shape on here. There are many ways you can do this. Not saying this is the right way. You can get templates off the internet as well. It really depends on what you want this to look like. If we want it to be a little more scientific about it, you could measure in. You can measure in, stuff like that. Really, a rose in nature doesn't look identical to another one, so if you make it a little bit off, it won't be that big of a deal. Something like that. I think we're going to go just a little bit larger on here. The next thing we need to do is drill a center hole in here. One of the things I forgot to do was I forgot to draw the sepal on here. Now I am not very good at drawing 5-sided things or really anything, so what I'm going to do is put this down. Now that is definitely not the right size here, but all I'm trying to do is just get some of the points. So that would be a center point. This here would be a center point. Maybe a little bit right there. Right here. And you can find, I just went on the internet and looked up rose sepal template, and this is what came up. And in the middle. So now if we draw something so something like that, and then you can adjust it here a little bit. Another option obviously is, a lot of you have probably already figured out, you could just scale this to whatever size that you wanted. Let's cut them out. If you had a bandsaw or something, this would be a lot easier. I don't, so just using what I have. Probably just would have been easier to shrink down the image, but oh well. They're all cut out now. I'm going to take them over to the grinder and just clean them up a little bit. All the sharp edges.
I should be able to work these right now because we heated them up and quenched them, and I haven't worked them since that time except for cutting them. So we will work these, get some texture into them. That will be the final time, and then we'll heat them up. At that point, we will clean them up after that, and then we should be good to go. I'm gonna do a special attention around the edges to make sure that there's no burrs left over. Everything should have been taken off by the grinder and buffing wheel, but
one leaf and one stem. So I have just wrapped the ends of my pliers in aluminum tape. So now on to the stem. Things that you're going to be asking are, how long should I make the stem? What do I need to make it out of? You don't need to make it out of the copper tube. You can make it out of copper wire. So what I would do is I would get your tape measure. I'd find out what a typical vase or vase height is. So I went and measured my wife's, and it is about 10 inches to the top of most of them. Some were a little bit shorter. So I know that I need my leaves above 10 inches. When you put your leaf on, you don't want that getting caught in the top of the vase. So I'm going to put those at 11 inches. So that means I'm going to stop my copper pipe at 14 inches. And then we can cut the excess off. Now the stem, I wouldn't make it perfectly straight. I would take it and just put a little bit of shape into it, which is what I've done. Put a little bit of braze right on there. And that will be the spot where all the petals sit. So they're going to sit about there, so we need to make a little bit of a ledge. So we've built a little bit of a shelf here. All right, just knocked off a little bit of the edge, so it should sit down there. We've got the soft jaws in here so we don't damage this pipe too much or mar it too much. First thing is we're gonna put on the sepal here, and we want this texture facing up. Now, as for the texture on these, I did try and texture both sides, but the final texture was only on one side. I want this to be on the outside. There will be more surface area on the outside when you're looking at it. We do have a little bit of texture on the inside, so I'm going to put this on the outside. You can choose to do whatever you want. And then we just start building it, the biggest ones down to the smallest ones. So crossing them, crisscrossing them. I'm going to cut that off. Now I'm just going to try and bend this in. This is kind of what's going to stake our rose, prevent it from moving. We're driving this down similar to like a rivet, I guess. It would be like a bolt where you put in and then you mushroom over the other end of the bolt, kind of like what they did on ships. So I don't know if you saw, but I kind of bent this stem a little bit right at the base there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that with some braze, or braze it. I don't know what the proper word is, but I need to figure out something else to clamp this down here. So maybe I'll hit that, braze that a little bit, and then I will continue on trying to clamp this down. Okay, so this is going to be ripping hot, but that looks a little bit better. And actually, now is a good time to talk about this, but one of the things you can do with this rose is leave it in its natural copper form. If you try and spray it with some kind of lacquer that can yellow and chip over time, what I was thinking of doing is actually hitting it with a little bit of heat to give it some of this oxidization or color. So I might actually just buff off the down here a little bit and then just continue on, and at the end hit this with a little bit of color to make it like the blues, the reds, all sorts of the colors you get as you heat up copper. Okay, got that cleaned up. I'm going to try with the socket here to get everything to sit down where it's supposed to. That's a lot tighter there. Okay, I'll bring you in here for a bit. So that's kind of what I ended up with. Something like that. So now let's start to bend these into shape here. So that's the center here, and then we'll just kind of bend the tops down just a little bit.
Just work it till you're happy with it. I bent down the sepal as well. So I think that looks actually pretty good. So something about like that. So we're just gonna put a little spot of braise, a little spot of braise. If you know what the right word is, just put it down in the comments. Can't seem to see. Oh. Okay, that one fell fast. Well, that's where we're attaching our pedals now. Is right there. So let me get a little bit less heat. We'll build that up. It will be fine. It will be unique. Only one piece of that actually stuck. So this side right over here, still have a hole there to fill. That looks a lot more promising. I was going to try and offset the leaves a little bit, but I think that's exactly where they're going to get stuck. So I'm not, obviously, ooh, that is warm. I'm not an expert at brazing. I've only done it a few times. So you want to put some on your material, you want to put some on the piece you're trying to attach, and then melt the two together. So let's continue and see how this works. Alright, I am happy with that for now. I'm going to go clean up some of this flux off here. Okay, so now to patina it, I guess. It's already got some going on. You just want to get it with a little bit of heat, not too much. And there we have it. It's all done. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.